Hello and welcome to our Gem Pursuit. My name is Matthew Weldon and I'm joined in our magical and mysterious pursuit through the world of antique and vintage jewellery by my trusty co-host Alyce Ketcher. Hello Alyce.
Bonjour.
This week we're continuing on our journey through the beautiful city of Paris. We've already looked at the Musée des Arts Décoratifs and the Louvre Gallery, and after one of our recent mini-series, we know you're going to love what we're talking you through today. Alyce, would you like to reveal what we're talking about today?
Today it's all about the French crown jewels. Well, what's left of them anyway.
Well, there's a pretty good and impressive amount of them left, so can't wait to get into this one. Let's get started. I think the French crown jewels, recently, just to give a bit of context to our listeners, we actually went on a company trip. We took all of the staff, nearly 3 of us out of 4. We went over to Paris and we went to the Musée des Arts Décoratifs, which we talked about recently. And then we went to see the French crown jewels, which were obviously an incredible collection. So we've actually recently seen these pieces in the flesh. But it's important to get an understanding of the history of these pieces, because I suppose unlike some of the other crown jewels that we talked about, the French crown jewels definitely had a lot of like ups and downs, whereas some of them had a very steady history and they accumulated slowly. These had a bit of a roller coaster, didn't they?
They did. I mean, I think when I think of the crown jewels of France, it's kind of like a sad story. Some people call it historical vandalism, especially because the collection was broken up. But it's really important to understand that the history of the French crown jewels actually predates all of the other European families' royal collections. And I think it's actually probably the one that spurred on the rest of the royal families to create their own collections for posterity. So the crown jewels themselves actually began with Francis I, or Francois I. And he saw the need for, I'd say, consolidating wealth, which would bring political power to his heirs. So as a lover of jewels, he decided to create a collection that couldn't be touched, that would be passed down from generation to generation to the heirs of the throne. And he begun this by selecting 9 stones to begin with. These 9 stones turned out to be what was known at the time as Bayless rubies, which were found in the Afghanistani region, which of course we know now to be spinels. And these started the collection. Now, to give you an idea, I was looking up like a spinel, that sounds wonderful, like
it does.
Today, a 240 carat spinel wouldn't be sniffed at by us. However, at this time, at Francois I's time, this particular spinel, one of the 9 at 240 carats, could have actually purchased a property. That's how valuable it was.
Yeah, and it's in gemological context, it would be great to listen to the gemstone series that we've done, because with the timing of King Francois and these Baylor's rubies, we talked about spinels, we talked about rubies. At that time, just because they were red, they were all rubies, basically, and they didn't test them. So obviously now we'd know, man, it could purchase a property. So
yeah, a property with a castle on it. Like I'm talking about a significant chalet.
Not like a Dublin apartment or something like that.
No, although that would be impressive today. It would be the same price today. But so it's hard for us to kind of compute that in our minds, the value of these gemstones. But this is why when these royal collections began and as they passed down through generations, it's the reason why a lot of these families were able to stay in power. And it's the reason why certain families looked more attractive to marry than others, because they had this wealth. They would look at their collections, they would look at their properties, but most importantly, they would look at their jewels. And so they'd be like, okay, that's a suitable person to consolidate our wealth with. And so it was a very clever move for this particular king. And it wasn't until James I, which was almost 50 years later, that the English actually started their own jewel collection. So the French royal jewels are actually older than the most famous royal family jewel collection, which is the British royal family. It's actually older than their collection. So this is a really, really important royal collection.
Yeah, he was really forward thinking in that sense. And I think, as we saw with, and it just keeps going to my mind, the Danish crown jewels, and how they're owned by the crown, and what King Francois I did with creating that law of alienation, which again meant that no one particular person owned them. That seemed to be, if you look at the other royal jewels we talked about, that was a key move. If the families did that, they seemed to hold on to the jewels, I suppose, because they weren't mine. They're not. Yeah. They're the crowns.
They don't disperse. I think it also helps family members to understand that the crown is an entity. So it's something that's passed on as like a baton, and whoever's holding the baton gets what comes with the baton, right? And that's what the crown jewels are. They're part of the baton. So if you don't do that, it's kind of like, okay, well, I have a daughter who might have been the eldest daughter, and she might have got some of the crown jewels, but she wouldn't have been the ruler. Right. So this is how things get broken up. So making sure that there is always this collection of jewelry that is used by the ruler of the country, always make sure that there is power behind the throne.
Well, it's infinite. It doesn't end with a lifespan. So,
but it also gets joined too. So like each king has added to it as well. And the French kings had insatiable appetite for jewels, specifically gemstones.
I mean, they were symbols of wealth and power, as you said, and that was really important, especially when it came to marriages. They were also really important to finance wars, actually, and primarily as collateral. So, there were a lot of wars at this particular time, particularly in Europe, the French, the Spanish, Portuguese, Italy, particularly Milanese area, and of course England. And these crown jewels were used to finance these wars. Now, actually, as we talked about Francois I was actually captured in a battle at one stage, and he had to negotiate his freedom, and he had to give up a lot of territories. Actually, it was the Battle of Pavia in 1525. He got captured by the Charles V of Spain. So he got his freedom and actually just went straight back to war. But following that, King Louis XIV, who was the Sun King, he also added immensely to the collection. Famous additions, I mean, in particular, the blue diamond, later known as the Hope Diamond, one of the most famous diamonds in history. I mean, it's blue, which obviously makes it stand out.
And also is a symbol of the French royal family. So blue was something that they always kind of gravitated towards. You'll see a lot of sapphires, and their coat of arms is in blue. So you'll find blue in particular would have been very attractive.
Well, les bleus. I mean,
yes.
Throughout history as well, the French crown jewels, I mean, and we actually saw them, and there were some really impressive jewels, as you said. They had an insatiable appetite for amazing gemstones, but they were redesigned, remounted, and particularly some of the diamonds that they had and some of the gemstones that they had.
Also quite clumsy, I found. Like, I know that with Francois I as well, he had this amazing table cut diamond, which was called the Mirror of France. And he lost that one day, like just walking around with your Mirror of France diamond, and he loses that. And then he spends the rest of his life trying to find it, like trying to find something similar. Now, I have to say, I've come across this many times in my life, people who've lost something, a beautiful jewel that they love, and then they try and go and find it for the rest of their days, and it never ends well. It always ends with, oh, it doesn't look exactly like the piece that I lost. And I'm like, if you lose something like that, that's like a real one-off, don't look for the same thing.
It's impossible.
You're not going to find it. It's really just going to make you upset.
Well, at least the problem with a once-off is that there's only one of them.
I'm gonna get lost.
So
right?
no, but
really,
no, but that's the thing. That's why people loved it, you know. So and
yes, but you can't. That one off means you can't find it again. So you have to kind of put it out of your mind and find something else that you love equally. And that's what he did. He found more gemstones.
Yes, he did.
But he wasn't from the house of Bourbon. So his Francois' line dies, and then we go on to the Louis. So they kind of come into power, and that's where things kind of go awry.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, French Revolution, downfall of the monarchy, 1792. The crown jewels were placed in display at the Garde Meuble, or the public treasury, which is at the Hôtel de la Marine. Now, sometimes hotel in French is a bit of a false friend. It doesn't actually mean hotel as we'd understand it. It can just mean like a building of something. It doesn't literally mean a hotel. So the Hôtel of de la Marine is where they were kept. They were last used before that, or the coronation regalia was last used before that on the 11th of June 1775, which is just a few years before, at the coronation of Louis XVI, husband of Marie Antoinette. And sure, we know how that finished. Not good for them.
Well, I think for those who are listening, we should let them know exactly how it did finish in 1793, which was with all of them bar one who was in a foreign country, which was the daughter.
She got away.
Getting their heads cut off publicly in front of everybody while people threw rotten fruit at them.
Such a fall from grace. That's where the famous phrase came from, which although never actually has been confirmed that Marie Antoinette said it was "let them eat cake," but I don't think she ever said that. Her last words, funny enough, and this didn't come across this in the research, but apparently she said "pardon moi." She stood on the shoe of her executioner and she said "excuse me," and then got guillotined. But I mean, for the crown jewels, so if you're thinking, you know, the royal family has been executed, these were so symbolic of their power. So the big question is what was going to happen to them.
Well, the truth of the matter is that the French royal family, as the French knew it, was gone. But a new infinite power basically took over and got labeled under a different name as an emperor. It was the same exact thing. And that also got its own regalia, let's say. But we're not going to go into Napoleon and his whole history because that's a different episode. But these particular jewels kind of get recycled a little bit, but not really. And then it's really in 1887 where the infamous auction happens, because the French finally get rid of an infinite leader and they get their kind of, I would say,
Republique.
Yeah, republic. So it becomes more of a democracy, you say, but they were very scared that someone would come back and claim the crown. And so the famous saying is, without a crown, there is no king. And so in 1887, they decided, we're getting rid of this crown because we don't want any head to come over here and go, I'm the new king. So that's what they did. They got rid of them.
What would you have given Alyce to be in that room in 1887 to see the auction?
I mean, it's almost like the picture of the Bolsheviks with the Russian, the Tsar's jewels. If you've ever seen that picture, and it's like, it's just got, you know, all of these guys around a table and they're removing gemstones from like amazing pieces of jewelry. And it's just, the table is covered in diamonds, and, you know, there's a big gold eagle on one side, and there's, you know, there's all of this amazing jewelry around. And I understand now, you know, when they talk about historical vandalism, we understand right now, oh, please, I wish they hadn't have done that. And it's very similar to like when you look at the Parthenon, you know, and you see that the heads of the statues have been cut off by Christians because they were like, you know, these are idols. So they cut the heads off the statues that were on the Parthenon in Greece. And the Bolsheviks remove all of the diamonds from the royal regalia. And then the French are in this room trying to dismantle jewels that began in 900 AD is when this particular royal family started. So like trying to remove that history, basically trying to stomp it out. And yeah, I mean, what is the same kind of historical significance or event that would happen today? I don't know. I don't think that there's anything that kind of is on par with that. So yeah, I would just like to be there to see what the thought process was, what people were, you know, being in that room would mean understanding what these people were trying to achieve. Because other than like just selling jewelry, it's kind of like giving away a part of your national identity to somebody else.
Yeah. Although you could argue it created a new national identity as well. So I'd say similar things are definitely happening at the moment, but the thing is you don't know what it is because you'll only know
you're too close to it.
You'll only know in the future, and you go, we shouldn't have done this. I mean, it's a very tricky and complex comparison. I mean it was also a financial thing for this current government to just sell them, because I mean this sale of the French crown jewels, I think it was 6.8 million francs, which certainly sounds like a lot. I haven't actually calculated what that would be today. Now let me see, 6.8 million francs in 1887 today.
Well, I think obviously, you know, it's a lot of money in 1887. We're talking millions when it wasn't really.
Possibly billions, actually.
Yeah. Well, millions then in 1887, it would be incomprehensible to most people, whereas today millions is completely different.
So one comparison you could say on price, right? Only about 80 years earlier, so not miles and miles earlier, the United States paid France 15 million for the Louisiana territory, which is pretty much half of the United States. So that'll give you an indication of the amount of it.
Well, it definitely would have helped at the time. It would have had a little boost in the economy for France, for sure.
Definitely.
But this infamous sale of 1887 was also the catalyst for many people who are trying to grow their wealth as well, not only France. And Tiffany & Co., who, funny you should mention the US, Tiffany & Co. at the time were very lowly, entry-level stationery, basically gift shop at this particular time. And they actually purchased or acquired 1/3 of the French crown jewels. And it was through this particular auction that we see what Tiffany has become today. So without this particular auction, without this, we don't know if Tiffany would be where it is today, Tiffany & Co. So it was also a moneymaker for others who actually purchased part of this royal collection. And it's amazing to kind of see how, you know, even in the US, the crown jewels have this kind of gravitas that people still want it. Even if somebody's head was cut off, the person who owned it, their head was cut off before you, it's like still it's connected to royalty. It has this provenance. It has this grandeur. It was worn in the courts of old. It showed status. And still, regardless of how it was acquired, it was still coveted overseas. And I think that's really important to mention for these particular jewels, because it, you know, we think, oh yeah, no, it has a little bit of an icky story. Well, it doesn't really matter if it's beautiful. People can overlook the ick.
And if you want a detailed illustration of this sale, there was a chronicle by Arthur Bloch in 1888, giving a really detailed record of the dispersion of these crown jewels. Still to come, we are going to be talking about some of our favourite pieces in the French Royal Jewels collection, and there are some really nice ones, so definitely hang around for that. But first, we have some very beautiful new pieces which we have added to our Instagram this week. I've chosen one to tell you a little bit about today. Alyce, which one is it?
We decided to go with something that was French. Imagine. Really, with French pieces, especially ones that we acquire in store, it's always about the finesse and the finish of these pieces. Really wearable jewels, just precision and beauty is always one of the main requirements of a French jewel. The piece that I've chosen is actually a Ceylon sapphire that's set in the center of 2 rows of glittering diamonds. And this particular French piece is finished in platinum. It also has fleur-de-lis shoulders, which is very typical French motif. And it is so wearable. It's so low to the finger and very innovative for the time period. So this was created circa 1915. And in platinum, with this kind of precision and beauty, it's very typical to see the French stepping outside of the box and creating something so wondrously beautiful.
And if you would like to see this piece, you will find it on our Instagram, which is at Courtville Antiques. And of course, you will find a direct link to that piece in the description area of this podcast. Now, it was also important to note that prior to the sale, 8 jewels were also kept in the crown jewel collection. I mean, obviously it's been added to and the collection's really impressive today. And, you know, we were there, we've seen them in the flesh or in the stone or whatever the correct analogy would be. But I mean, there were some amazing pieces and we always like to pick our favorite. And I can tell you this really was a difficult one because there was some incredibly intricate pieces where you had to admire the goldsmithing and the lapidary and just the pure craft of it. And then there was also just gemstones that were like nothing you've ever seen. You know, so I don't know, trying to pick a favorite, Alyce, what would you go for? I mean, it's a hard one.
Well, number one, looking at the crown jewels that are left for display purposes where you can actually view them in the Louvre. I think, you know, what stood out to me mostly was their gemstones and in particular their diamonds. So the French kings really had an eye for large diamonds. Now, if they were still in power today, and the collection was fully intact the way that it was in 1790, we would have probably one of the most magnificent collection of diamonds. Now, I understand that the UK, the English monarchy, the British monarchy, they have the largest diamonds, right? The Cullinan, they have the largest. So that's a different kettle of fish. However, the French have the most beautiful. And when I say the most beautiful, I mean its style, its scintillation, its color, its quality. So the French aren't about just big. They want everything. And I think that's the problem. That's why, they ended up where they ended up, because they didn't want just the biggest. They wanted the most beautiful. And the Sancy is one of those diamonds. Now, looking through the gallery, I'm not going to go into too much into that because that's going to be in our next section about where the crown jewels are now. You see the diamonds that were in the French collection, the French crown jewels. A lot of them are colored diamonds. So just to give listeners a bit of an idea, colored diamonds, or diamonds that are not in the white range, are considered fancy colored diamonds. And fancy colored diamonds make up less than 1% of the full diamond trade today. So when we talk about rarity, fancy is the rarest. Now, the very rarest color that you can get for a fancy colored diamond is red. We don't have red in any of the French crown jewels. We do have blue, we do have pink, we do have yellow. And all of those colors are also extremely coveted and rare, and are considered probably the most coveted today. The Sancy diamond, which is the diamond that I've chosen as my favorite piece, has never been graded for its color, but it is considered a pale yellow. So I would say that it'd probably get a fancy pale yellow. Okay. It's 55.23 carats and it's in a beautiful shield shape. However, what's really noteworthy with this particular diamond is that it is of Indian origin and it has brilliant facets on the front of it, which means it has like little kite-shaped facets and little star facets, so triangular facets, which you don't really usually see on older diamonds. So this would have been a cut above the rest, pun intended. And those particular that particular style of faceting actually brings the stone alive. And for those who have seen Golconda or Indian old mine diamonds, these particular diamonds are known as the first water, and they're super clear in terms of their clarity, and they scintillate like no other stone. So it's considered probably, at the time of when it was acquired by the French family in 1661, it was considered one of the most beautiful diamonds in the world, or if not the most beautiful diamond in the world. And the way it came to be in the French court was actually because it was owned by a cardinal Mazarin, who had an extensive collection of jewels. It said that his jewelry collection by itself was equal to 20 tons of gold.
Jeez.
So, and this was in 1600s. So he was extremely wealthy. He also didn't have a family because he was a part of the church. So he acquired all of this wealth, and this particular diamond was then bequeathed to the King of France and stayed in the French royal family until it disappeared in the French Revolution. And then it kind of pops its head up in a few different places. It lands on a Finnish princess. It goes across the seas. It becomes a part of a Russian private collection. It goes missing for 40 years. And then in 1978, it was purchased by the Louvre for $1 million. And so from 1978, from then till now, it has been secured by the French people inside the Louvre. And it is currently there now for everybody to see if you go and visit the Louvre. So, I mean, that is a really brief history of this stone. This stone has been owned by English kings, Scottish kings, French kings. It's been owned by a cardinal. It's been owned by a gemstone dealer. It's been owned by the French people. But its history has always been tied to power. And more importantly, its longest history has been tied to the French royal family.
Really incredible stone. And, you know, we were lucky enough to obviously see it. And I think it just shows you, when we were talking about the importance of these stones in history, what they mean to the different monarchs and the implications that they can have. It just showed you how this stone moved around so much. And it's incredible to see it. But thank you very much for sharing that, Alyce.
It's okay. What's your one, Matthew?
And I totally agree with you that the history of that stone really could be an episode in itself.
It could be. I really, honestly, people, if you want to learn more about that particular diamond or diamonds in general, just think of it in this way. A diamond that has its own name usually has its own history. So the most important diamonds in the world are all named. Even the modern ones that come out now from like the Lesotho mines that Graf cuts, he will name them and they will be named as they come out of the ground if they're important diamonds. So each of the diamonds in the world that are properly large have a name and have their own personal history.
How do you go out naming a diamond? Can we just name some diamonds in store or like?
No. Well, I mean, most of them, when you look at the diamonds, like Sancy, the Sancy is named after de Sancy, who is the man who originally acquired the stone from India. And so it's kept that name because he acquired it. And then you have the Trevor, I never say his name right. Trevornier.
The French
blue.
Yeah.
That was called after the French explorer who was also a gem collector. And then it became the Hope diamond because of the family that purchased it. His last name was Hope. And then you have, you know, the Star of Africa, which was named by the mine who mined the stone.
I feel like if it's named organically, it's probably like a more fitting name. Like if you mine it, then you market it as a certain name. Okay, obviously that's very important. But if, did like the Hope Diamond, that name just kind of got it. And it, obviously after the family, and it stuck with it. And over time, it just became known as that. So maybe one day we'll have a couple of diamonds like that. We've sold one or two nice ones in recent memory that I can think of. But Alyce, I mean, talking about the French crown jewels, I mean, that was a great insight to the stone. I mean, it's hard to get away from the diamonds in the collection, even though there is some really nice pieces of jewellery and, you know, carved vases that we mentioned in our previous episode. I mean, when I'm thinking, I was going to do the Regent diamond, which is just an incredible, faceted, brilliant cut stone. The rough crystal is about 426 carats, ended up being about 140. It's a beautiful old, like cushion cut diamond. As you said, diamonds of the first water. And that to me was an incredible stone. But I think it's, you know, it's got its own history as well, but in a way it's got some similarities. But the one I want to talk about is just a diamond that stuck in my head actually after seeing the collection in the Louvre, which is obviously where they're housed, which we'll talk about in a second. And the reason I really like this stone is because it's there almost by default. And a simple clerical error has meant that it's actually still housed there. So fair play to the person who made that error. But it's a striking diamond. And on first look, you might actually not recognize it as a diamond because it's got a very unusual shape. It's called the Hortensia diamond. And it is a pink diamond with 5 facets. So it's a pentagon. And it's also slightly tinted, kind of brownish orange. It's 21.32 carats. So like enormous for any diamond, but especially a pink stone. And the shape is super distinctive. And once you see this stone, you'll be able to identify it straight away because it doesn't look like any other diamond that you'll ever see. And what I really like about, some of these old iconic diamonds that we talk about is that they're not shaped like any other stone. Because we often think of diamonds as the classic round cut, but I mean, they can be any shape. And particularly if you get large, rough crystals, then you've got to factor in the license of the gem cutter, whenever they were cut to maximize the weight, but also keep it beautiful. So the name is the Hortensia is actually, it's named after the pink hue that resembles the flower of that name. So that's an easy way of remembering it, I suppose. It's first mentioned in about 1691 in the inventory of the crown jewels, and it's listed as one of the 19 button florins in King Louis XIV's diamond parure. And a florin is is usually the piece that sticks out either of a tiara or out of a necklace, the pieces that hang down. It was recut in the 17th century. It was originally a square-shaped diamond. We don't have the weight that it was before it was recut, which is a pity because it would be interesting to know how it would have been, because any pink diamond of that size would be historically important. And a bit like, some of the other diamonds in the French collection, the Sancy and the Regent, for example, has a bit of a checkered history. It was actually stolen during the looting of the Garde Meuble in 1792. It was found the following month. The thief was condemned to death, and one of his last confessions, I'm sure he was trying to parlay it into his release, was he disclosed the location of it.
But it did not save him.
No. But they got the diamond back. Now, it was set into a shoulder strap clasp commissioned by Nito for Empress Eugenie in 1810. It was eventually mounted into a hair comb, again for Empress Eugenie, for the baptism of her son in 1856. Now, this is how it ended up in the collection, because obviously we know the sale of the crown jewels happened, but they had designated eight pieces to keep in the Louvre Museum. This was not one of them, but it was attributed to the Mazarin, which was
the cardinal,
which is the
same guy that I was talking about.
Is attributed to, which is part of a brooch, which was designated to be kept. And only after the sale happened, and
they realized
that actually it wasn't part of it. And
they went, well, we'll keep it.
We'll keep, yeah. And one of the big questions about the French crown jewels is, and we could talk about this in a second, is, where are some of them that were sold? Because, they'd be obviously very valuable, incredibly interesting from a historical point of view, and, tracking them down would be super interesting. But obviously this one didn't happen. It was misdesignated and therefore remained in the collection. So, it did disappear from the museum for 2 years, and it's not really known why it arrived in 1889, possibly because of that misattribution. But that doesn't really make sense, because if it should have gone straight in there. So it kind of has 2 years where no one seems to know where it went. Probably
hidden under a piece of paper or something. They're like, I forgot about that one.
Yeah, this pink diamond, So, but yeah, went into the museum in the Louvre, and that's where you can see it today.
Well, I think we've done a few spoilers through this episode as to where the crown jewels are today, Matthew. So why don't you just give the precise location to find them in the Louvre?
Well, I don't think I'm qualified to do that either, actually, to be honest with you, because I was lost in the Louvre for about an hour trying to find it. But it's, okay, Louvre Museum, Paris, we talk about in our previous episode. There's a gallery called Galerie d'Apollon, which is, almost in between floors, it seemed. So
the way that I'd like to, for everybody to understand where it is behind the winged Victory, which is the amazing sculpture that is like on a staircase in the middle of the Louvre. So it is really difficult to find, but I think it's difficult to find for a reason, for security purposes, I would say.
Yeah, I actually think that probably is.
Yeah,
why.
I really do think that that's probably one of the reasons behind why. However, it's a small collection, I'm going to say. It's a small collection of what was a grand collection of jewels. And there you can find hard stone vessels that were owned by the royal court. You can also find some of the original boxes that used to house some of the jewels.
Yeah.
Without the jewels, but with the boxes.
I totally forgot about the boxes.
Yeah, the boxes are there.
Box for one of the crowns is like
fabulous.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's gorgeous, and it's molded to the shape of the actual jewel itself. So it's quite fascinating to see, but does not have the jewel contained within. And then you have a few parures, one which is a emerald and diamond parure, one which is a sapphire and diamond parure. There is Eugenie's wedding bow, which is a diamond corsage or brooch that is spectacular. It has tendrils and beautiful swags, but also long diamond ribbons that come from the bow itself, which is also on display there. And then, of course, you've got the large diamonds. You've got your Hortensias there, the Sancerres there, the Regent diamond is also there, all on view and display. And they're done absolutely beautifully. But where the crown jewels are today, anybody could have a piece on and not know. And that's the truth of it.
Well, and the thing is, they are somewhere. Like, someone has them.
Yeah, but
a third of them went to America straight away with Tiffany's.
Yes.
So,
but people don't stay in one place as well, and specifically the people who would have been purchasing those kinds of jewels, heiresses and barons, like oil barons. They didn't all stay in the United States. A lot of them got married to the aristocrats of Europe, so could have then also brought the jewels back into Europe as well. So they could be anywhere.
It's amazing where these things end up. And that's why sometimes you could be looking at for example, you could be looking at a sale, in the middle of nowhere that normally just sells like local secondhand jewellery, and something amazing could turn up. And yeah, as I said, people never stay in the same place. It would be super fun to find a piece. Of course, as an antiques dealer, that's kind of what you always dream about, finding something really historically important.
There's a few. So I'm going to just, there's a few that have been found. So in 2017, the Grand Mazarin diamond, and we can all imagine who that was named after, because I've just talked about him, the Cardinal Mazarin, and Matthew also, he was connected to the Hortensia diamond. The Grand Mazarin diamond, which was a 19.07 carat light pink from the Golconda mines, has reappeared. That was also in the French crown jewels, and that sold in Christie's in 2017 for over $14 million. More recently, there has been a French crown jewel necklace that was found that was acquired by M.S. Rao, and it features diamonds, pearls and Burmese rubies. And it's almost in like a spray kind of necklace that goes all the way around the bust area. And this particular piece was found in 2023. And that is, it was in a New Orleans arts and antique dealer who actually acquired this particular piece, still in perfect condition. And so this particular piece, it was on sale for $375,000 US. So,
sounds pretty reasonable.
It sounds reasonable for a piece, but that just shows you that these pieces are out there and they are still in circulation, and there are people who either own them in private collections and know what they've got, or people who have received them through inheritance and maybe don't know what they have.
Well, we are going to wrap it up there on one of the most amazing collections of diamonds and royal jewels that we have been lucky enough to actually see ourselves. So thank you very much for everyone listening. I really, really hope you enjoyed the show. Remember, we have notes on what we spoke about with links and everything else you might need in the description area of this podcast. So make sure to check that out. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that follow button. My thanks to my trusty co-host, Alyce Ketcher.
Thank you, everyone. Merci.
And to our podcast producer, dustpod.io. We'll be back with another magical and mysterious pursuit through the world of antique jewellery very, very soon. And until the next time, from your host, Matthew Weldon, chat to you then.